In the deepest corner of the prison's solitary confinement unit, there lived an unusual inmate. Each day, he climbed the walls not to escape, but to train his body. While others paused to rest, he focused on lifting weights. While others relaxed, he continued practicing boxing. Along with doing pull-ups and push-ups, he carried the heaviest logs during labor, and even ran to build stamina in the rain. The driving force behind his obsession with strength came from a deeply rooted hatred. Before being locked up, he had lived as an ordinary engineer with a loving and beautiful wife. One evening, a criminal broke into their home. Kyle LeBlanc heard his wife screaming for help over the phone and rushed back in panic. When he arrived, he saw her lying motionless in a pool of blood. Later, Kyle LeBlanc succeeded in capturing the attacker and brought him to trial. However, to his shock, the rich criminal bribed the judge and was declared not guilty, walking free. Seeing the shameless expression of the man who murdered his wife, Kyle LeBlanc was overwhelmed with burning rage. The moment the trial concluded, he grabbed a police officer's gun and shot the criminal dead, taking revenge for his wife. But the real tragedy was still ahead. Kyle LeBlanc received a life sentence and was sent to the most dangerous prison in the region, where inmates were brutal and violence was routine. The corrupt guards ignored the constant fights and killings. Upon entering, the prisoners were forced to give up all their belongings. One guard became fixated on Kyle LeBlanc's wedding ring. When Kyle refused to surrender it, the guard violently assaulted him and took it by force. Inside the prison, there was a cruel inmate named Andre who took pleasure in tormenting the weak. Kyle LeBlanc's cellmate, Billy, was frequently targeted by Andre, while the guards ignored it because of his bribes. That night, Billy's painful screams echoed across the cell block, keeping Kyle LeBlanc awake the entire time. The following day, Kyle LeBlanc saw Billy's miserable condition and Andre's arrogant expression, which immediately reminded him of his wife's killer. Unable to hold back his anger, he struck Andre in the face, leading to a fight between them. The guards stepped in, but they only detained Kyle LeBlanc, exchanging a knowing look with Andre, clearly sharing a secret understanding. Afterward, Kyle LeBlanc was thrown into a small dark cell, the most horrifying place in the prison. He looked down at the sewage flowing beneath his feet, releasing a strong, unbearable stench. The walls were covered with the blood of a former inmate who had taken his own life, sending chills down the spine. Every day he was given a bowl of foul, pig-like slop as food. Sleeping meant lying on a hard stone slab beside the filthy pipes. Kyle LeBlanc could not endure it any longer. In the middle of the night, he ripped apart his prison uniform and twisted it into a crude rope, planning to hang himself. But the poor quality uniform failed him even in his attempt to die. In frustration, he turned to the wall and began smashing his head against it again and again, briefly losing consciousness. At that moment, a moth drifted in front of him, hovering for a while before landing beside the food bowl. Kyle LeBlanc lifted the bowl, and the moth came to rest on the spoon, as if urging him to eat and stay alive. Deep within his mind, Kyle LeBlanc recalled his gentle, deceased wife, and his desire to live returned. He forced himself to swallow the difficult food one bite at a time. When Kyle LeBlanc came out of the dark cell, a guard moved him to another cell. It had 4 beds, yet only one inmate was inside. The guard coldly told him that a serial killer lived there, and had already killed his previous 3 cellmates. With a sinister tone, the guard added that if Kyle LeBlanc wanted to survive, he should pay him quickly to arrange a transfer. Soon after, Kyle LeBlanc was locked inside, and only then did he realize it was occupied by a dangerous man known as 451. Fear took hold of him, and the next day he approached the guard and handed over all the money he had managed to collect, hoping to be moved. The guard took the money but said it was not enough. Kyle LeBlanc understood he had been tricked, but had no choice except to endure it. He slowly discovered that the prison was split into 3 main factions that were constantly at war. The man he had offended earlier, Andre, was not only the second in command of one faction, but also the prison's fighting champion. Yes, this prison held a brutal fighting contest where winners rose in rank, while losers were beaten to death. The guards and the warden knew about it, not only allowing it, but secretly supporting it because it earned them large profits. Andre's group did not intend to let Kyle LeBlanc off, and while they were working, they seized him and beat him, with guards watching from the side, not only ignoring it, but later locking him in a cell. On a rainy day, water poured straight into the building, making the already harsh conditions even worse. In his deepest despair, Kyle LeBlanc finally realized one truth. In this ruthless place, only violence could protect him. He began training like a madman, climbing walls, doing pull-ups and push-ups, hitting sandbags, lifting weights, carrying loads, and running for endurance. After months of intense training, Kyle LeBlanc entered his first fight, and his opponent was none other than Andre. As soon as it started, Kyle LeBlanc was struck, taking a heavy blow to the stomach. He was completely overpowered by Andre, but he endured the attacks and found a chance to strike back back with one punch, then two, three, and a flurry of blows. But the moment Andre regained himself, he continued to strike Kyle LeBlanc without mercy. Andre seized him in a shoulder throw, hurled him to the ground, and viciously drove his knee into his head. Kyle LeBlanc was left bruised and bleeding, struggling to stand, only to be knocked down again. In the end, Andre grabbed his leg and smashed it against a pillar. At that instant, Kyle LeBlanc kicked Andre in the groin, then lunged forward and bit into his neck. The situation flipped immediately, but the guards sensed something was wrong and rushed in to pull them apart. Andre's windpipe had already been torn through, and he died instantly. Seeing this, from the inmates to the guards and even the faction leader, everyone stared in shock. They had just witnessed Kyle LeBlanc tear through his opponent's windpipe, and with his body soaked in blood, he released a beast-like roar that kept everyone away. From that point on, Kyle LeBlanc became the new fighting champion of the prison. His fighting method was reckless and relentless. He would take your hits, then answer with 4, 5, 6 punches until you fell. Since the match rules stated the loser would die, Kyle LeBlanc killed opponents one after another, steadily climbing in status. He cut his long hair and styled it into a neat pompadour, giving off the image of a boss. The one completely different from Kyle LeBlanc was his cellmate, Billy. Faced with the prison's violence, Billy only wanted to escape. He tried to break out multiple times, was caught again and again, yet never gave up. One day he used a stolen key to unlock the cell door, and was about to grab the hidden pliers when a guard caught him in the act. This time, Billy's fate was sealed. The guard handed him over to a massive man who tortured him until he was barely alive. Before dying, Billy told Kyle LeBlanc, "Don't become what they want you to be." Kyle LeBlanc finally understood his mistake and began to resist violence. Another fight came, and his opponent was the same hulking man who had killed Billy. However, Kyle LeBlanc chose to surrender and refused to fight back no matter how badly he was beaten. This caused the warden, who was watching the match, to lose face in front of the guests. He ordered the guards to capture Kyle LeBlanc and hang him on an iron frame, declaring he would remain there until he agreed to fight or died. Day after day, under the burning sun and pouring rain, Kyle LeBlanc quickly grew weaker, but he never gave in. His resistance began to influence other inmates, and they slowly realized that in this prison, the warden was the only one who benefited, while the prisoners were just sacrifices. As a result, conflicts between factions disappeared, and the arena fights came to an end. The warden's profit-making scheme collapsed completely. Through Kyle LeBlanc's persistence, peace finally overcame violence. However, the guards did not dare to kill him. If they did, wouldn't he become a martyr? One day, Kyle LeBlanc was released, and the warden finally decided to make an example out of him. But instead of ordering the guards to attack, the warden released another inmate, a massive, monster-like man nearly 2 meters tall. The giant loosened his collar and rushed toward Kyle LeBlanc, beating him without mercy and trying to strangle him to death. At that moment, Kyle LeBlanc desperately began pounding on the iron door. Hearing the pounding, the giant suddenly stopped and let go. It turned out that whenever Kyle LeBlanc was locked in solitary, he would hear someone knocking on the wall next door, and he would answer with 2 taps. Over time, he had formed a connection with that unseen neighbor, who turned out to be the giant. The giant, who had limited intelligence, recognized Kyle LeBlanc and reached out to touch him. This sight stunned the warden, who immediately ordered the guards to aim their guns. To protect Kyle LeBlanc, the giant charged at the guards, taking bullets while overpowering them, even breaking through the prison gates before finally collapsing. Enraged inmates began attacking the guards, and soon the riot spiraled into chaos, with violence, destruction, fires, and escape attempts everywhere. It was only when guards and armed forces arrived with machine guns that the riot was forcefully brought under control. Amid the chaos, Kyle LeBlanc met his cellmate from room 451. It turned out he was not a killer, but a judge. The people he had killed were all vicious criminals. Room 451 had also hidden a diary containing evidence of the warden's violent profiteering over the years. He gave it to Kyle LeBlanc, telling him to take it out and expose the warden. As for escaping, room 451 already had a plan. He wanted Kyle LeBlanc to take part in one final fight. No matter the result, the warden, to save face, would send him to the execution ground, which would be the perfect chance to escape. Soon after, Kyle LeBlanc entered his last fight, and his opponent was the same hulking man who had killed Billy. This time, under Kyle LeBlanc's full-strength punches, the man was quickly defeated and impaled on a wooden stake, paying for Billy's life. As expected, Kyle LeBlanc was then taken to the execution ground. Inside the garage, room 451, who had been hiding, suddenly attacked and helped Kyle LeBlanc defeat the guards. Next, room 451 made Kyle LeBlanc change into different clothes and told him to get into the warden's car. But room 451 himself remained behind, as he had more important matters to finish. Soon, Kyle LeBlanc drove through multiple checkpoints with the evidence and escaped, finally returning to freedom as a man of justice. Meanwhile, room 451 infiltrated the warden's office, slowly approaching with pliers in hand. When the guards burst in, they found the warden with his tongue forcibly removed, punished by having it torn out. The man who profited from violence was ultimately destroyed by violence. With that, the story comes to an end. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps like this. Thanks for watching.